Welcome in, listeners. This is Margin Mavens, a podcast hosted by Steph and Kayla, where we share our thoughts on all things literature. Today's episode is about Soulbow, and we're joined with Fionn. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Nice. Fionn Kelly and August Oliver. Soulbow is a fast-paced, dark story following a man who's trying to outrun a demon. Literally, the content for today's episode contains talk of death, torture, and overall dark and gritty. Please take care of yourselves and only listen if such topics do not make you uncomfortable. Now make sure to grab a snack and a drink, and unless you're driving, then remember 10 and 2, and coming out with us while we dive in. All right, so I felt personally victimized by this book.
That was sort of the impression we got.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Not to say that I didn't feel personally victimized, but it's definitely one of those books that I think by the end I felt like I was punched in the throat, which is probably the intention. So good job. I'm not.
We did our job.
But we had a very brief conversation about kind of precedents when it comes to the genre and everything like that. So if you want to kind of go into that first, and then I'll just piggyback off some questions.
Sure. Would you like to take this one,
Sure.
publisher?
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the linear nature of fantasy, and the truth of it is it actually has so many genres, and it has so many subgenres, and the level of fantasy component, ranges a lot. And one of those subgenres is grimdark fantasy, which varies in several ways, but one of the main things is grimdark fantasy is unlikely to have a happy ending. It's the kind of fantasy where they kill all your favorite characters. It's the kind of fantasy where you're not spared any details about injuries or devastating deaths.
Think Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very Game of Thrones. We had a junior agent say that it was probably going to be this whole series. It was going to probably be the next Game of Thrones in its intensity. It is you truly believe your favorite characters are going to die every chapter. And I think that a lot of times, because people have so much overexposure to the romantasy genre, sort of the idea that there could be a romance in a fantasy that's grimdark has a tendency to confuse it with a romantasy. And I think that was kind of one of the things that you and I had talked about.
Yeah, for sure.
That it may have the fantasy components like a romantasy was, but the love aspect of it is an additional plot device to make the character doubt themselves and to make the character unsure about whether they can trust. And a lot of times in these grimdark books, they mistakenly trust the love interest, and then it comes back to bite them in the ass. So.
Yeah, I think I remember reading, and obviously there's a ensemble within the book, right? So you have Soulbow, and you kind of find out very quickly that things are not as they seem with him.
Yes.
You've got a lot going on with his family and stuff. We're not in the spoilery section yet, so I'm keeping it very vague. But it's a very fast-paced book, which I think a lot of people who go into fantasy, right, they will either love it or hate it, right? Some people want very slow world building. I like a good mixture, so this one was really fun to read. I think once I finally sat down and actually read it, because life was lifing there for a little bit, I couldn't put it down, which I think is why the punches of Grimdark really punched, right? And I don't think that's it should never be taken as an insult in any way, especially once we had the conversation about genre. Because once I understood the genre, I was like, "Oh, y'all nailed it! You're doing great."
Thank you.
And I think even I was just looking through the Amazon listing, right? And I was like, "Oh my god, it does hit a Avenged Sevenfold song," and then that all made sense. I'm just a sensitive girly, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a really good book. It does really well for the genre. I don't think I'm the intended demographic. And sometimes that just kind of happens, and I think it becomes a really good conversation between author and audience, right? We were just kind of having this conversation earlier with a different author in terms of demographics and how those kind of play a role in social media and how a book is perceived, right? Leading into Soulbow, what kind of was your inspiration behind one, getting the story out there, and two, like picking that genre? Like, are you guys also just big fans of Game of Thrones, and was it intentional?
So actually, it had nothing to do with Game of Thrones.
Uh-huh.
We
Although we have watched it all.
yes,
I
we have.
haven't because I'm sensitive.
Then that is a good thing to know, because I certainly was about to bail out when it ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have not gotten into House of the Dragon because despite being a Grimdark author, House of the Dragon is too much even for me. Like
Mhm.
it's just it's shock value for the sake of shock value, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as this goes, we actually play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons as a
Yes.
household.
We've really run into a lot of Dungeons and Dragon authors recently. The nerds are
Yeah.
nerding. It's good.
It's such a good storytelling exercise because you're storytelling as a group. And with the aspect of like the dice rolling, you're kind of left not being able to control every aspect of the story. So it's kind of putting you on your feet improv wise. But Eleanor, who is one of the parts in Fionn's system, she actually created this whole world, Shotern, which you know from Soulbow. And this was years before I ever even joined the family, knew about
I think it started about 2017.
yeah, and I didn't join the family until like 2021. So um, she was kind enough to allow me to create a character to bring into this world, and that character was Tomrin. And the reason that we gave for why he hadn't been there the whole time was that he'd been hiding out in the underground worlds that you know as Anaroth, being a hunter because his parents had tried to sacrifice him to a demon.
You know,
Um,
girly things.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, girly things. And so when she had put her book out there for submission to major publishers through her agent, um, she was like, well, you know, we write a lot of books together. You need to have a book that goes along with mine so that we can have the same agent. And so together we sort of came up with this idea to give Tomrin his own story.
Kind of leading into what you guys were just talking about when it comes to like the different systems and publishing and everything like that. I guess I can really dig into first and foremost, like, what is it like writing a story while also dealing with DID? Because obviously I think there's not a lot of authors that are dealing with it,
Yeah.
you know, and there's not a lot of people that are dealing with it. I think apart from like the people on TikTok that you will notice
That's
saying
usually
that they
what
have
people
it,
think
right?
about it.
And then you're
Yeah.
like, guys.
It's a little bit performative.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not actually our publishing company has 3 authors with the ID, the 2 of us and our dear friend Karina, who writes under the name Zella Beldrick. She also has DID. And she has been diagnosed since the days when they called it multiple personality disorder
Mhm.
instead of DID. So that's kind of interesting. But to answer your question, and feel free to correct me, I almost think authoring is easier with DID.
100%.
I have 14 individual entities in my body, maybe 15 actually now, and you have 13.
13.
So finding inspiration for characters isn't hard at all. If you take, for example, our first release, Pledge, that was based on August and his fiancee Chase, and because they already had the connection while writing together, they were just pouring themselves into the page. Whereas with Dominion of Magic and Legacy of the Gods upcoming, August and myself and Eleanor are actually writing that book, and I am Aaron Connolly. He is Julian Chevalier, and she is Lisette. And
I'm also half of Beatrice.
and he's half of Beatrice, and his other part, Amber, is the other half of that.
Making sure that I don't make it too male.
So I think that when you're looking for that inspiration for character, I'm just like, okay, who's up? Whose turn is it now to be the characters?
And it's actually interesting with Dominion of Magic and Legacy of the Gods because we actually started writing those books before either of us even knew that we had DID.
Yes,
so
we
it
did.
was interesting to kind of figure out after the fact where those characters came from.
Yes, we had started those books when we were 2 lesbians. You were married to a man, and living 5,000 miles away?
2,000.
Okay, there it is.
All right,
Character
so
growth.
the psych degree in me is really going to start showing. So how how does kind of, I guess, how did your journey with DID start? What was the diagnosis process of it? Right? How does it really like manifest in you?
Do you
Frick the
want to
book
answer that?
stuff for
You
a
want me to answer
second, but
Sure, I'll answer first because
We've been answering this question a lot lately, as
yeah.
you now
yeah,
understand.
yeah.
And it's actually interesting with Legacy of the Gods coming out in just a few weeks because it was actually that book that kind of gave us our first hint that he had DID.
Mhm.
Um, because there was a day when we were writing a scene, and all of a sudden the character Aaron, who's the villain of the story, we had it plotted every single chapter. This is what's going to happen, and all of a sudden he just went completely off the rails, writing this incredibly violent, vicious scene where he killed off a bunch of characters that we needed for later in the book, and I was just like, "Hey, buddy, we
Well,
kind
you
of
thought it was Eleanor.
well, I
Didn't
thought it
you?
was, and I was just like, listen, I'm on board.
Don't
I'm
kill
on
me.
board. But we kind of need to discuss what's going to happen from here if that's what's going to happen at this point in the book, because we kind of need that character to fulfill this role later because she's the only one who can.
Mhm.
And Eleanor was just in a very strange way, like she sort of like turned into Aaron right before my eyes and became very.
Because we were on video.
We were on video call, like we were from 2,000 miles away on video call writing this book, and she became very sort of withdrawn but aggressive in a way that I had like never seen. And I kind of thought nothing of it. I was like, okay, well, she was just like in the mindset of the character. But then a couple months later, we had created these other two characters for a D&D campaign again, and we decided we were going to write a book based on them. And while doing this, who I thought was Eleanor kept getting into the headspace of this other character, Kess, and becoming Kess. And after like a few weeks of this kind of happening, I was just like, have you ever thought?
Mayhaps.
Have you ever thought maybe that these people are real and they just live in your head? And there was kind of like a light bulb moment, and she took it to her therapist, and sure enough, she got a diagnosis like that.
that day.
And over the next several months, she would talk about things like that she was going through with her DID. And I'd be like, that's a little relatable. Just a little relatable. And I kind of kept it to myself for a
Well,
long
our
time.
favorite story is the one where we were just regularly interacting on a day-to-day basis. And what was it about the royal we?
Yeah, I mentioned that, when I'm talking to myself, I say we are not going to do that. We do this, we do that, we don't do this, we don't do that. And you looked at me and you were just like, it's a little weird, bro.
People don't talk to themselves like that. Like that's different.
And so finally, like 6 months after you got your diagnosis, I was just like, hey, I don't want you to think that I'm like trying to like
Copy.
you or make you think
Like grade school, you know.
like that I'm trying to like take away something that makes you really special, but I actually think I might have parts too. And you were just like, yeah, that makes sense.
I was like, and yes. Well,
like
Like, there was,
attracts
like, no-
like. Yeah.
there was like no question about it. And once that happened, we all kind of started putting together like who was who at what times and with which partners.
and you can see it as far back as our childhood pictures, and like going through the years, you can see each of the individual parts. So
Yeah.
Is there, man, is there like a, because everybody, it obviously manifests differently in everybody. Is there a like set schedule or like a routine? Are there triggers that like you guys deal with? How does that work on like a day to day?
Well, we've tried a schedule.
that's what I was
And
going to say.
unfortunately, the thing is, because different parts of us have been created and trained to deal with different aspects of life, if a situation comes up, the schedule just goes out the window.
Yes. The schedule was a very futile attempt.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
the thing is, we do have a lot of couples, and a lot of them don't get to see each other very often. Like I mentioned Kess before, his partner Asher, who actually is fairly close to the front a lot of times because he's the lead editor for Finch Benson. Kess doesn't come out almost ever because he's more of an inside part. And so they don't get to see each other almost ever. So the schedule was in an attempt to give couples like them a chance to actually be together for a little while. But
It just doesn't work.
we gave it a try for like 2 weeks, and not a single day went by.
Yeah, and so I think that's the main thing, is that who's out is a lot of times based on what's needed. I'm the one who has more of the cool head, I have a tendency to step in when there's conflict. Eleanor is the director of everything. She's the director of life. She manages the whole household and sort of tells everybody what they need to be doing. Um, I mean, August, you're sort of the outside face of your entire system.
Yeah.
So it all depends what's going on. And then we get into situations like this where we have what we call free time, where nobody's really needed. And so people who want to get shit done come out, and if we have appointments, we come out. So
We also have an interesting system that we've developed for if someone wants to come hang out but maybe they're not needed, but they want to come out. For example, Fionn's partner in my system, Nick, um, he'll come out real easy if Fionn's around because he's just happy to see him. But if there was a time that he wanted to spend time with him and maybe I was hanging on, couldn't really let go of the front or anything, we've all developed songs that we can trigger ourselves out to.
yeah.
Man, my brain is just going so fast right now.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
No, it's okay.
It's okay. Okay, so then how does this work when it comes to like writing books together? Or I've always been very interested in how people write books together in general because it's obviously been something that I've thrown at Kayla randomly in my moments of hyperfixations, and she's really held strong to the not now. Do you guys do it on like one document? How do?
How do is a great question. We have logins to each other's everything because I would say people could probably label us a codependent relationship. But we usually sit down together and Eleanor tells us what the story is going to be. And she plots
always
it.
Eleanor.
It's always Eleanor. She's an incredible storyteller. I feel very blessed to share a body with her because she is of a generation level storyteller. And then we sort of set to work with our rough draft first. We've essentially decided by that point who is going to be writing what characters. And
sometimes not even. Sometimes we create the characters and kind of let them come out and see who ends up taking the wheel.
Yeah. And then we just developed actually a new process for doing this. So we do the rough draft. We usually do that at the same time over a few weeks.
We'll go back and forth. Like I'll write a chapter, then you'll write a chapter, and we'll sort of go back and forth so that we can see what the story is as it goes. And we'll have plotted it ahead of time. So we know kind of what's supposed to happen, but the details will be worked out.
Correct. And then, as we're doing right now, he's editing. He's doing Asher's job of editing. And he'll edit a chapter. Then we'll read through it together so that Eleanor can hear if the words sound the way she'd envisioned them sounding. And then we move on to the next chapter.
Yep.
Wow. Is it loud in your brains?
Yes.
Yeah.
We actually have conversations with ourselves out loud because it is so loud in there that being able to maintain your line of thought while you can also hear others talking is nearly impossible. But a lot of times it's just like, Chase, knock it off. Connor, that's not necessary. It's never really like a whole back and forth.
It's like comments and stuff. Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. I had a question and then it got lost. Hold on. Eventually the train will come back. What kind of, I guess, prompted you guys to want to start this like publishing company? I guess is the train.
Sure.
Well, I think that it probably started back when we first started writing Dominion of Magic, to be perfectly honest, because we had just we met on Twitter. We made friends. We were going to help each other with PitMad, which, for those who aren't familiar, was like a pitching event that you could do on Twitter to agents and publishers. You know, you had the length of a tweet to convince someone to ask for your manuscript, basically.
Yeah.
And so we were supporting each other, you know, sharing each other's posts, trying to help each other come up with good posts. And Eleanor goes, you know, it would be really fun. Let's write a book together with two other friends we made. And they backed out at like the first stage.
Early stages.
Yeah, like before we ever even started plotting. But we were like all in. We're like, this is going to be so much fun. And it ended up working so well that we continued to write books together. And we got an agent at one point, and we were being shopped to publishers. But we just weren't thrilled with the nature of the industry taking away creative control from the authors.
This was also that time when there were certain authors being sort of thrown out there as using ghostwriters and doing really shady practices to those ghostwriters and taking away rights from minorities and stuff. And we are not down with that. And so we made the executive choice after 6 months to leave. It might not even. Yeah, I think it was 6 months.
It was about 6 months. No, it was actually little more for you, little less for me, because I got the agent signed me about 3 months later.
Yeah.
It was about 6 months for you. No, 9 months for you, 6 months for me.
Okay. And one of the things I always reference is that I kind of knew that the industry wasn't for me the second she said, they may want to change your name. And I was like, well, first of all, I'm already writing under what would be considered a pseudonym. Yeah. So I didn't know how I felt about that.
Mm-hmm.
But when the time came and all this stuff was coming out, we were just like, we could do this better. You're a great editor. I can do cover design. Like,
And I
all of
had
our covers are done in-house by Chase.
And I'd had experience with self-publishing before, because before any of this ever happened, I had self-published my first novel. So I already knew where to go to get your books printed. I knew what systems to use for editing. I knew how to format a book. And I'd worked with other editors so that I could improve my own skills.
Yes. And so about a year after that, we decided to start Finch Benson.
Mm-hmm.
And at first it was just going to be for us to sort of genre separate our own work. Put Chase as the writer and put August as the paranormal writer. But we had friends that we wanted, first of all being Erin Carrera, wanting to bring her on because she has this amazing manuscript called Ghosting Shakespeare, and which is coming out later this year. But then we had our friend Carly, who goes by it is.
Nope, we're not going to say it. We had a friend.
We have a friend.
She's one of our authors. We won't say the name because she writes under a pen name.
But and she wanted to join.
Mm-hmm.
And it just sort of started building from there, and we kind of created this wholly original idea for our publishing company, which is a co-op. Just like a garden where everybody brings supplies, so everybody gets to share in the rewards, and no money ever passes my hands as the publisher. They all have their own KDP accounts, but what we do is each member brings in their own special set of skills to contribute. So, like cover design, editing. We have someone who's an expert in marketing. We have somebody who is a paralegal. We have a social media queen. We have like all these various different parts. And so nobody pays anything for any of their books to get made. And we all help celebrate each other's books like that.
That's so sweet.
I love that.
I'm such a sensitive girly. This is a bad time for me.
So are we.
I can't tell sometimes. I can't tell. Okay, so then the train is leaving. When it comes to kind of keeping track of everything, right? Because like even just being a 2-person podcast with like my lovely partner that is our editor, right? I still sometimes feel like I want to like lose my mind over everything that's going on. How do you keep track of not only everything as a publishing company, right, but within your own like DID systems, especially when you hit double digits in terms of the people that you're sharing a body with? How is there like a one Google calendar? Like what is happening there?
That would be far too
organized.
It's
chaos.
It's chaos.
Oh,
it really
yeah.
is. I also have a very high degree of amnesia. My brain wipes about every 30 minutes.
And my amnesia manifests in remembering things incorrectly rather than forgetting them.
Yes. Oh. So any system we've ever tried to set up, it just gets forgotten about completely. So we both have physical planners that we try to write things down in. Something about being able to hold it sort of helps a little bit.
The actual act of physically writing it sometimes helps me a little bit too.
Yes, but we're very lucky in that we live in 2 systems where we've gotten enough therapy that all of our people want to work together for common causes. You guys are getting there. My people, we literally are just one big family, and we all want to, encourage each other's successes and do whatever we can to help each other. So I think that helps with keeping track of stuff, because if one person doesn't remember it, maybe somebody else will.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's why I always tell people, like, if you have something you need us to do or something you
Tell
need,
both of us.
tell both of us,
Yeah.
because you got a 50% higher chance of it getting remembered.
Yes.
Gotcha. So is it like the scene in like SpongeBob with like the filing cabinets?
I'm not familiar with that scene.
We're old.
How old are we talking? Because like SpongeBob's for everyone.
I mean,
wait, don't give it away. How old do you think we are?
Nope. Kayla has trained me really well here.
Well, I have weight loss skin, so it doesn't count for me. But let's just say he got carded recently because they didn't think he was old enough. We are born 12 days apart. June of 88.
Yeah.
Okay.
July of 88. Let's go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
like, I grew up with a little bit of SpongeBob. I'm just not familiar with that scene.
It was a
Yeah.
little bit towards the end of our childhood years.
His
Yeah.
mom loved him, so she got Disney Channel.
No, you can't say that. I always say that. You can't say that.
Yeah.
They'll
I
ask
did
me.
both.
They'll ask me about like Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon
Yeah.
shows, and I'll just say,
Yeah.
And they
well,
were
my
within the
parents
3
loved me.
channels.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now they're not, and everything is bad.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was born in 98. And so SpongeBob is like
Yeah, that
big
makes
for
sense.
me.
Yeah.
But there's a specific scene where SpongeBob is dealing with some sort of memory issue, and he's got like SpongeBob's in his brain, and they're in like essentially it looks like a big office, and they're trying to find like a memory, and so they're looking through like filing cabinets and they're
Yep.
trying to figure it out.
That sounds pretty accurate,
Yeah,
actually.
actually.
Nice.
We also recently discovered that there's an episode of South Park where the guy thinks Butters has DID, and he does it wild justice though. Like I can't.
Like, they're
explain
making
it.
fun of how, this can't possibly be DID because Butters is he's just playing make believe.
Uh-huh.
But
I think Butters has DID.
I'm a believer.
Nice. I think South Park is like the one old cartoon that like
Oof.
so what I'm specifically meaning is that like my dad was very like not involved in terms of what I could watch and what I could not watch. I was just having this conversation with Kayla a couple days ago where like my earliest memory of like him showing me media was literally like Halloween, like the first movie with Michael Myers, which then caused the obsession. And I mean, my birthday's on Halloween, so like a lot of it goes hand in hand.
Nice.
But South Park was like the one rule that he had that I could not watch South Park. I don't know if it was because South Park was just too much or if he just didn't like it and didn't want.
It's too much. I can
It's
tell
too
you that.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. South
But
Park
as
is
an
the one
adult,
thing.
it's great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back then, no.
Gotcha.
No, I always was curious about why there were fourth graders in my class watching South Park, and my mom was like, "That's for grown-ups," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"But the kids are watching it in my
Yeah.
class."
Not me
Yeah.
in 6th grade watching it at a sleepover.
Yeah.
I
very
had a ton of
different
friends who
upbringing.
couldn't watch SpongeBob. Like their parents didn't allow them. And like even actually now that I think about it, I believe like our editor, my partner, he was not allowed to watch SpongeBob because they said it would make him stupid.
Well, you know what? Perhaps.
And I would like to say I'm on my way to getting a 2nd degree, and SpongeBob I still quote daily.
Excellent.
But okay, so then going back into like Soulbow, it's supposed to be a like large universe,
Yes.
right? So like, how many books are we talking here? What's your turnout rate for books? Because it seems like you guys constantly have like one in the works and one coming out. Like, do you guys sleep? Are you maintaining
No.
like good eating habits?
Definitely
Not on either of those things. Not even close. Like
Mm.
I literally, I've been up. It's 4:30 here. I've been up since 8 a.m. and I've had an apple with peanut butter and a whole bunch of matcha.
I've had like several cups of tea, I believe.
And yeah, I literally went to bed last night still editing on my phone.
Yeah.
Like just
The second we open our eyes, that's it. It's editing mode. But I think one thing that people don't really know about us is that we have authored over 300 books in ghostwriting, and we were bestsellers for several ghostwritten books as well, which obviously we can't drop the titles. But I think that helped us to sort of figure out how to write fast.
Mm-hmm. And this new system that we're doing now with the rewrites and everything
is going to make it even faster.
It's going to make it even faster. But the series that Soulbow is a part of, which it's technically part of two series. There's the smaller series and then the overarching series. The smaller series is the Families of Power series, which is going to have 6 books, each of whom is going to star a different character from one of these families of power.
Mm-hmm.
And then that series is part of the overall Shotaran Chronicles, which is going to have, including the Families of Power series, a minimum of 11 books, which is not including any of the side novels or prequels or, in the future books for the world that we have planned.
Are
And
those ones
actually,
also like the over-encompassing series? Are those also Grimdark?
No.
Okay.
Each book will sort of be in its own thing.
Okay.
I was going to say, I can actually, if you want it, send you a copy of the one that's sort of the
book 1 kind of.
Yes, what do they call that? Like the apex point of this whole thing, which is not Grimdark. It is pure classical fantasy, and it's like found family, humor, queer rep, diversity rep. It's really
it's kind of like Umbrella Academy if Umbrella Academy
Yes.
was fantasy.
If Umbrella
I still haven't
Academy
watched Umbrella.
smashed with D&D, it would be Guild of Blood.
Yes.
I've
Yeah.
yet to have one bad review about it, and I think at this point probably over 100 people have read it.
Yeah. Send over
It's-
anything. I will probably still read the other Grimdark, but it's just now that I'm
Yeah.
aware. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like I might just like take more pauses. You know, if
Like,
you
You
know
mean
how.
you're not gonna binge it in a day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm.
Guild of Blood, though, you will binge in a day. It took you, what, 8 hours?
8 hours. And it was like 105,000 words at the time that I read it. And I read it in like 8 hours because I was just like, this is the best.
Yeah, I think you guys write really fast. Kayla and I read really fast, and so thankfully that's kind of how our like podcast I think survives because we
Yeah.
kind of had to have that conversation with ourselves when we started season 2 of like, okay, we can manage to do these 5 book a week lives, right? But we like to also read other things, and so we limited
Yeah.
ourselves to like 3 books a week. Which is why we end up delegating a lot of the arcs and everything. Because I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
we could do this, but we also enjoy our lives away from
Sleep.
reading sometimes, you know?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
man, I have questions about the ghostwriting, but I'm gonna listeners,
You
you're
can't
not
ask
getting
those.
those. Yeah, you're not
You
getting
can't,
those,
yeah.
but I've got questions.
You can ask us when this is done.
Yeah, of course. What is, I guess, some of going back into kind of writing and being in that world and stuff, what are some of your pet peeves in a book?
Ooh.
In our books or
Any book. So like
Any
if
book.
you're
Well, why
reading
do we
another
put all of
book,
our
what
pet
is
peeves in our book?
I mean, like writing with each other is what I mean.
okay.
Because like you've got some with me for sure.
In any books.
Yeah.
Well,
Miscommunication trope.
miscommunication trope.
Amen, hallelujah.
Like we put those in occasionally, but it's usually not like traditional miscommunication trope.
It's like two people are in their separate thing and they have a misunderstanding, not based on a conversation they had with each other, but
Mhm.
just based on what they've heard from other people. But
Gotcha.
never like if they just had a conversation, it would be fine situation.
Like it's because they can't have a conversation or something along those lines.
What else would you
Mhm.
say? I would say when a romantic interaction focuses too much on the male in the interaction.
Amen,
That's
hallelujah.
very niche, but I'm not here to read
Men.
unless it's an MM, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I want to read about what she's experiencing, not him.
Mhm.
And to that, if people use odd euphemisms, that really is no thank you.
Mhm.
Unless it's intentional.
Yeah, there's no I've noticed I either really hate the weird
Euphemisms.
Mhm.
Name
There it is.
I really hate when they get weird, right? But I also really hate when they get technical.
Yes.
Yes.
There's
You
like
know?
a middle ground where you
Yeah.
have to find the balance between the two.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
if I'm reading any sort of like open door scene and it gets technical with the usage, I immediately am like, I'm gone. You lost me.
Yes. Agreed.
I'm not trying to read the science.
Yeah, this
Oh,
is
another
odd
thing.
to me, guys.
Yeah. Another thing that we really hate is I don't stand for it at all in our own authors. I will not purport anything that has women being shitty to other women.
On the basis of being a woman.
Like for example, oh, this guy left me for another girl, I'm going to be a bitch about her. No, we're not doing that.
Mhm.
And we will not be doing, you'll never see from Finch Benson anywhere where we are promoting body shaming. Like if a girl's like, oh, I looked at my body in the mirror, I'm fatter than I was yesterday, I will have them take it out.
Also bad mental health rep.
Yeah.
Bad mental health rep. I will say, I have a feeling this may hit bad with some people, but Nesta Archeron, she's labeled as being a PTSD case, and she is, but she's also a narcissist. And
She's
if you
also
can't,
just a mean character.
yes,
You know, like
but she's a narcissist, and that's the thing people need to understand, because the mental health rep from Sarah J. Maas coming out is that, oh, she's just traumatized. Well, we need as a society to recognize that
someone could be
trauma
traumatized, but they got to work through
turns
it.
into narcissism.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is a valid reaction, but let's not pretend that being a narcissist makes her a strong, empowered female.
Mhm.
It is a way to cope, but it's not a good way to cope. And
Yeah.
so,
Right.
for that reason, you'll never find a Nesta Archeron character in any of our books.
Yeah. Listeners, listen, because I know the Sarah J. Maas people come in and they come in full force.
They
All
do.
right? Listen to me when I tell you Throne and Glass was a better series. You will not see episodes about it on the podcast because I can't stand the author. But it was a better series. And that's it. I wasn't going to apologize to them. If they come in full
Yeah.
force, they come in full force.
No,
But
well, I am not in any way, I'd like to say, invalidating Nesta's journey.
mhm,
I will just
it
say
is an important
that I
journey.
think it would be healthier if we
Yeah.
acknowledge that she's suffering from narcissistic personality disorder, which is actually grounded in self-loathing. So,
Mhm. And she's also
It's
just a
it's
really
worth
bad
highlighting
sister
it.
and doesn't really
yeah,
get
if
past that.
anybody had that sister that was a bad
Yeah.
sister, you identify with
Yeah.
having the bad sister, and you're just like,
Mhm. She's allowed to grow from being that bad sister. But that doesn't negate the fact
Well,
that she
and
was a
she
terrible
tried.
sister.
She tried to make her grow, and then in the next book was like, just kidding.
Actually,
She's still this horrible.
she's gonna be worse. So leading into, we were talking about books and stuff like that, and we've kind of been
Yes.
all over the place, but that's life. When it comes to writing characters that are heavily based off, if not people that like you are, right? Is there ever a point where a scene is being written, right? And then immediately you kind of have to like argue with like your other systems? Like, hey, this scene, right, is incredibly important. Maybe you could be nicer about it.
Are you saying between the two of us or
Both.
internally? Okay,
Both.
between the two of us, pretty much constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much constantly.
Yeah, I mean, that first example I gave of the first time that we ever had any indication that there was multiple parts is a really good example of that between
Yeah.
the two of us.
Hey,
There's
don't
also,
kill off the entire cast. We need them.
Yeah.
exactly. But there's also times when I actually do. I don't talk about it quite often, but I actually do have a narcissistic personality disorder as well. It's something I'm in therapy for. I'm really trying hard to grow from that. But there are times when there's something I've written that gets torn to shreds, and it hits my ego in a really bad way, and I get really sort of upset about it,
Mhm.
and then there's usually a fight.
Yes. But you're doing so much better now.
Thank you.
So much better now.
That's important.
But internally as well, I think sometimes certain people will have sort of a soft spot for a character. I might be the culprit currently, and might be. And sometimes you want to soften the blows of the reader's perception of them. For example, Aaron, he's a tyrant. He is a narcissist. He is really creepy to his wife.
He's a little bit of a sociopath.
He is not a little. He's a lot of a sociopath. And I have a really hard time with not putting in actions that redeem him, because we want people to know that sometimes sociopaths are very alluring and very attractive. He's definitely that line between,
morally gray
and absolutely black, because he kind of goes into that slot of like the fantasy bad boy, without it going into the territories of rape or stalking or anything like that. He does stalk his ex-wife a little bit, but he worships the ground that his wife walks on. But
and he
also
believes everything he's doing is for the good of mankind. Like, he truly believes that.
Yes, he really, really does believe what he's doing is right, and it is not right. And we have to make it clear that it's not right. So I have to give ground sometimes of him being misunderstood. I have to allow the audience to translate him the way that his actions should leave him open for interpretation.
Gotcha. I think my brain's officially empty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Kayla,
sure?
did you have anything you wanted to ask?
I had just like a quick question. Do you find, which you've sort of answered already, but like, do you find it difficult to write Grimdark given the current state
Of the world?
of the world?
Actually, no, it makes it easier, because the thing is, even in Legacy of the Gods too, like, I've kind of found as we're going through it that there's this sort of feeling of responsibility to have the characters stand up against things that aren't right. Like, there's one scene in Soulbow where there's a tyrant character who's beating the crap out of him, and his partner's like, "Why would you let him do that?" And he goes, "Because people who are wielding power they shouldn't have shouldn't get to just treat people however they want to." And I think that I feel that very deeply right now. What?
That scene, the end of that scene took it all out of me. Every bit.
But yeah, I think that, I'm doing that a little bit in Legacy of the Gods too, with the way the characters are interacting with Aaron, the villain.
Why did you point at me?
Because you're the one who writes them. And just the way that it's like, there is a line between hiding from this person and feeling responsibility to stand up to this person.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Wow. This is normally the point of the episode that you can self promo. So sell your spiel, talk to the listener about things that are going on, add to your 300 lists of books, where to
Those
find
are just
them.
our ghost written books. Those don't count our books we wrote for ourselves.
Nope.
Yeah.
The jealousy is pouring off of you right now.
I can whip you into shape if that's something you want. There's no better person to teach you than me. I can promise you that. All right. Self promo. Finch Benson Publishing, the world's first co-op publisher. We are going to be attending several conventions this year. We've got Villains.
First is Tea and Tropes.
Tea and Tropes,
which is in May.
In Tempe?
I think it's
Mesa,
Arizona.
So that's
Hot.
local for us.
Rainbow Readers Cruise.
Yes.
Rainbow Readers Cruise in August, which is going to be leaving from Florida and going through the Caribbean.
So maybe we'll need to meet up or something. We'll have to stop by and say,
I've never
hey.
been on a cruise.
Neither have I. I'm really excited.
Neither have I.
Excitement was not the word I was going with.
Terror? Dread?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love being on a boat. So.
And then we have Villains and Vixens in September.
In Texas.
And then we've been invited to be like featured guests at the World Fantasy Convention in Brighton, in England.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ooh.
So we're going to be releasing Aaron's book, Ghosting Shakespeare, at that time. Between then, we have our release on April 8th of Legacy of the Gods, which is book 2 of the White Orchid Black Rose now trilogy. We just announced that it's not going to be a duology. It's going to be a trilogy. And we just released a short story that's like a complementary material to this.
It's an origin story for the villainess.
The villainess
of the story.
Yes.
Nice.
We have a lot going on our website, finchbenson.com. What else? Between that, I was going to say between now and the end of the year, we have about four more books coming out.
We'll have pre-orders up for all of them soon. Currently, the one that we do have pre-orders up for that's beyond Legacy of the Gods is Pinnacle, which is book 3 in the Sepharan Bond trilogy, which includes Pledge and Paragon. Pinnacle is going to be the final book in that trilogy.
Which Pledge is about a rich frat boy who loses his parents, and suddenly some guy shows up on his doorstep and says,
well, at his frat house.
At his frat house and says, "Hi, I'm your soulmate." And he's like, "I'm not even gay." So
and he's like, "Okay, well, I'm a demon and I'm going to kidnap you back to my world and you're going
to be my soulmate." The end. So, yes, we have the first 2 books out, Pledge and Paragon, and Pinnacle will be out midnight on the 31st of December, which is Gabriel's birthday, which is our main character.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we'll have our Finch Benson Pride anthology. And
we have at least 1, maybe 2 more books in the Shotaran Chronicles coming out between now and then.
Including Guild of Blood.
Yeah.
My head hurts.
Busy.
Yeah, busy. We're making funny moves, as they say.
Yeah.
Listeners, Bad Sugar Baby was really great. I listened to the audiobook. I just have to say, it was enjoyable. I didn't know what to expect. It was not what I expected. It was very good.
It's
so
wonderful.
If you want to start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Erin was such a good narrator for it, too.
Yeah.
Yes, truly.
Well, she's an actress, so
yes,
like IMDb certified, as they say. So it's definitely worth checking out Bad Sugar Baby, especially if you're intrigued by the sort of Hollywood lifestyle and how things can go very wrong very quickly in the in La La Land.
Not to take away from everything else, but I just really enjoyed it.
It was a wonderful story, absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, we're always up for promoting any of our authors' books at any given time.
Yes.
That's very sweet. Well, thank you, listeners, for being here today. Remember, if you haven't been told already, you are special. You are loved. If you haven't followed us already on Instagram, follow us on Instagram. Making those numbers go up is my goal right now. But thank you to the both of you for being here and making my train leave the station, come back to the station, leave the station, come back to the station.
All good. We totally understand how
that But listeners, we will catch you in the next episode. Have a good rest of your day, and we will see you in the next time.